Hello friends, Craig Ballard with you here, the Bold Wonder, filming in the beautiful outdoors. The sun is shining, birds are singing in the city of Toronto. Absolutely thrilled to be representing the Tight Coverage crew here for a video taking a look at the options in the off-season for your Toronto Raptors. First and foremost, of course, I want to shout out my fellow Tight Coverage co-host. Shout out to Michael Pope, shout out to Andre Nurse, shout out to you at home as well for taking time out of your day to spend some time here going through this with us. Now, we know certainly one of the major changes in the offseason for the Toronto Raptors is going to be the coaching change. A new regime coming to town. Side note, of course, if you want to see get a good look at the Toronto Raptors coaching candidates, you know the Tight Coverage has you covered for that. Right here on our same YouTube page, we've got a video with the coaching candidates. As we speak currently, Mike Budenholzer no longer a coaching candidate as he's taken his sought-after talents to Milwaukee as he wanted to work with the Greek Freak. We can certainly understand that, but we know that that's one built-in major change, the new regime coming to Toronto. If you are out there hoping that the Raptors can improve this roster through the draft, there is certainly bad news there. As we speak, the Toronto Raptors with absolutely zero draft picks in the upcoming 2018 draft. Those draft picks taken care of in the Serge Ibaka trade. The DeMar Carroll salary dump trade had a couple of draft picks attached to it as well. And if you recall, the PJ Tucker trade also had a few draft picks attached to it. As far as free agency, this is a Raptor team that is absolutely up against it when it comes to having salary cap space. As we speak right now, this is a team that already has enough salary committed next season where they will yet again be in the luxury tax. You know that the Raptors would love to do something about that. Currently, to make matters worse, only 12 players on this roster as we speak, so a team that's already going to be in the luxury tax with only 12. The minimum is 14, and of course the best case scenario is 15, so Masai Ujiri and the Toronto Raptors needing to add a minimum of 2, likely, hopefully, 3 players to this roster. And we know that the Raptors won't be in on the big-name free agents anyway, even if they had that money to spend, the LeBron James, the Paul George. We know that's not going to be the scenario. But let's start with one, in my opinion anyway, extremely important free agent that the Raptors will need to look at. And it's, ironically, in fact, their own free agent, Fred VanVleet. This does seem like a glass half-empty scenario, as it is sadly unlikely that the Raptors will be able to re-up with FVV. At this point, VanVleet is able to get a 4-year deal, and since the Raptors hold his early bird rights, they will be able to pay him a bit more over the years 1 and 2 than any other team. But in years 3 or 4 of that contract, the Raptors face the very real probability of being massively outbid. There are several teams who, over the course of a 4-year deal, would be able to double the Raptors' offer to VanVleet. To free up the cap space likely required and playing time, keeping VanVleet may mean a Kyle Lowry blockbuster trade is required. Which, of course, is something that may well be easier said than done. So a re-up with FVV could be very difficult for the Raptors. So at this point now, let's take a look at the trade market. So to address trying to get back into the draft, certainly to address creating some cap space, it absolutely looks like Masai Ujiri is going to have some work to do, and it's going to have to be creative with at least one, probably a few trades. The bad news is he's going to need to be creative with these things, but the good news is we've seen this from Masai Ujiri in the past. Let's remember when he took over for the Toronto Raptors, he traded the untradeable contract of Rudy Gay, and he traded the untradeable contract of Andrea Bargnani. So being creative to create flexibility is something that Masai is good at. We've seen that in the past. Certainly trading one of the big ticket contracts like a Lowry, a DeRozan, a Valanciunas, and a Ibaka is going to go a long way, obviously, in creating flexibility. And now, of course, trading any of those contracts is going to be long odds. At the very least, the hope would be that a top 5 or 6 lottery pick comes back, so really help reshape the organization in addition to providing some cap flexibility. So certainly wish Masai luck if he's swinging for the big fences there. If I'm Masai, I'm looking more along the lines of the CJ Miles contract and the Norman Powell contract. Not that I would be in any hurry to move on from the soon-to-be 25-year-old Powell, but at $9+ million, his is a contract that, if shed, could go a long way in freeing up some much-needed cap space. We would have to acknowledge that Powell took a step backwards this past season, so I think Ujiri's best bet is to find an under-the-cap team who still sees upside in Powell and is willing to bet that a change of scenery is all that's needed. CJ Miles was brought in to be the team's sharpshooter on the roof, and while he did have his moments, were you overall satisfied with Miles, with his consistency? Even if the answer is yes, at $8.3 million, you'd have to understand why he's a definite candidate to be traded this offseason. I certainly know my tight coverage co-host Andre Nurse is absolutely down for a scenario that involves the Raptors moving on from CJ Miles. Two tricks that Ujiri does have up his sleeve that I hope he's going to be able to use in the trade market are the $7.6 million trade exception from the Corey Joseph sign and trade, and even more exciting, the $11.8 million trade exception from the DeMarre Carroll trade. Again, Masai will have to be creative here, but both trade exceptions expire soon, so surely he will be leaving no stone unturned in the trade market. Now, if Masai is able to work his magic and create some cap space, it's going to be critical to take a look at how much cap space was created. Because right now, it's looking like best case scenario for the Raptors is they're going to be able to use one of their mid-level or use one of the mid-level exceptions. But again, it depends on how much money, how much space Masai is able to carve out, because there's a massive difference in the mid-level exceptions. One mid-level exception, the one that he'll be gunning for, allows teams to offer up to 4 years at $8.6 million annually. Those are for teams that are enough under the tax apron where they can afford to add a player like that. If you're at or above the tax apron, which the Raptors are staring right in the face, is why Masai is going to need to be creative here, then the mid-level exception is a 3-year max up to $5.3 million. So quite the difference, and we're going to take a look in a moment here at the potential disparity in talent level that you can attract with one versus the other as well. Let's get into that. For example, if Masai is able to clear enough space where the Raptors can use the $8.6 million mid-level exception, then I'd love to see a run at a guy like Wayne Ellington. I think Ellington is poised to be a big-time contributor, a legitimate contributor on a winning team going forward, and especially if the DeMar DeRozan trade rumors are true, then Ellington is definitely the player that can step in to the shooting guard spot. So we'll watch the market closely and see if Ellington prices himself back down into that $8.6 million range. Same with a guy like Trevor Ariza, certainly going to be looking for north of $8.6 million, but if the market settles, and that'd be a great salary for him, this is a guy that brings a ton of winning experience. How about Jusuf Nurkic, the Bosnian beast? The soon-to-be 24-year-old is a double-double threat every night, and in particular, I would expect the Raptors to take a solid, strong look at him if they are able to move on from Jonas Valanciunas. This is Tyreke Evans. Tyreke Evans is one of my favorite players in the league and certainly one of my favorite available free agents. This 28-year-old feels like he was born to play basketball, born to score the basketball, can beat you in so many ways on the offensive end. In particular, if the Raptors are going to lose the scoring of Fred VanVleet off the bench, of course they'll have to find a point guard to replace him, but Evans more than makes up for the scoring punch off the bench that VanVleet leaves. Jamal Crawford, certainly worth a look. It may be true that his best days are sort of behind him, but he's certainly a player who's very used to contributing off the bench, and he'd add the sort of veteran leadership for this organization that would be massive. Crawford's certainly going to be worth a look if you're willing and ready to move on from CJ Miles in particular. For my money, Isaiah Thomas is a very interesting free agent out there. Do you still believe in IT4's upside? There was once a time, not long ago either, where Isaiah Thomas would be looking for significantly north of the mid-level exception at $8.6 million, but with everything that's happened to him over the last calendar year, say year and a half, he's very likely would leap at an opportunity for that sort of contract, at least for a couple years as a prove-me contract. So very interesting player to look at there, Isaiah, if you still believe in his upside. If Masai Ujiri is only able to free up enough space for the $5.3 million mid-level exception, then how about a veteran like Rajon Rondo? Or would Masai rather pay somebody based on upside to fit in with the bench mob like 25-year-old Malcolm Brogdon? At the $5.3 million mid-level exception, there are veterans like Jeff Green available. Did you believe in what you saw from Michael Beasley with his season with the Knicks? That he's someone who's out there as well, that price tag would probably fit. If Ujiri is looking for a big man who could very well have good upside, then I'd say a dark horse is soon-to-be 25-year-old Alex Len. The former number 5 overall pick has surely been inconsistent so far. We would certainly have to acknowledge that. But here's a guy who somebody's going to take a chance on because of that 7-foot frame, because of his growing ability to shoot the 3-ball, and because he's had ups and downs. Yes, we've acknowledged that, but those ups, folks, have been pretty impressive. Someone is going to pay Alex Len for his potential. So there you have it, folks. Is there a move in there that you're particularly excited about? Is there a different move you'd like to see considered? Please absolutely feel free to get at us at tight_coverage. That's our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter account. Certainly thank you for taking a moment here to check out our YouTube page, this video here on our YouTube page. Please, if you are inclined, it would be so kind, please do hit that like button. Please do hit that subscribe button as well. You know that's much appreciated. Greg Ballard, Michael Pope, Andre Nurse, the Tight Coverage crew. We'll see you next time.